It's your Thursday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be with you again today. Jam-packed show, as they often are this time of year. Randy Johnson, Gophers football beat writer for the Star Tribune, will join me here in just a little while, talking Gophers Iowa, that game on Saturday. It's been since 2014 since Minnesota beat the Hawkeyes in football. If this is going to be a successful season for the Gophers, that has to change Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium. They need to beat Iowa to make this a successful season. I think it's just point blank, that's what it is. I know they could still lose this game, maybe beat Wisconsin, and you'd still feel okay. But if this is going to be a successful year, especially after the setback they had with losing 3 in a row, you got to beat Iowa in this game. You got to stop that streak. You got to give yourself still a chance in the Big Ten West. And we'll see if they can get that done Saturday. They are slight favorites in that game. Should be a defensive tussle. Randy and I will get to that more later on. Get to a disturbing, wild injury update. Sounds like they're going to be without goalie Marc-Andre Fleury for at least a week. Putting him on injured reserve as soon as he can come back is the middle of next week. So a lot riding on backup Philip Gustafsson and others to get their offensive game going. So we'll dive into that a little bit here. A tough test coming up now against Pittsburgh, but a lot of home games coming up here on the schedule. So maybe a chance for them to get the offense going, even if even without Marc-Andre Fleury. Maybe they're going to need a little bit more offense in these upcoming games. Also get to an interesting Paul Allen, K-fan personality, Vikings play-by-play voice. People across America are finding Paul Allen. LeBron James tweeting about Paul Allen, so I'll get to that at the end of today's show as well. First, though, what did I miss? Got to talk Timberwolves at the start here. They beat Orlando 126-108 on Wednesday night. Watched a good part of that game. Kind of wanted to see what they would look like. Just had a little bit more interest in it after talking to some of the players and Chris Finch on Tuesday after practice. Just kind of wanted to see what of the things they were saying would carry over to this game, because there were a lot of them were talking about how they feel like they're getting better, feel like they're getting closer, feel like the offense was starting to click more. Feel like D'Angelo Russell had the quote that I ended the podcast with on Wednesday, talking about you can tell if the team has energy as early as shoot around. You can tell who got sleep, who didn't get sleep, things like that. So I wanted to see how they would come out in this game, what kind of a professional effort they would put forth in this game, knowing that Orlando's missing a bunch of starters, missing a bunch of the more experienced players, a young team, not off to a good start. So this is a game that, by all intents and purposes, the Wolves should have gotten into and established a pretty good control of this game. I wanted to see if they were going to be able to do that. And they did. They did from the start. A really good first quarter, a really good first half, a little bit of a dip in the third quarter when the reserves were in there, but the starters came back in, reestablished everything. That was never really in doubt, even when Orlando got the deficit back down to, I believe, 9 in the fourth quarter. Did not feel like that one was slipping away the same way that the Cleveland game the other day, was getting tight and tense, even though the Wolves did win that one as well. No surprise that right in the middle of all of this was Anthony Edwards, because for as much as the Wolves needed to win this game, for as much as I wanted to see what kind of energy and professionalism they would put forth, I also did notice that this was one of the first games all season where the Wolves played in a way that was joyous to watch, that it was an actual enjoyable sharing of the basketball, that it was a performance where you watched it and said, okay, this looks like a team that likes playing basketball with each other, that is putting some stuff together, that they're starting to understand what their overall strengths are. And no surprise that Anthony Edwards is right in the middle of it, because not only is he one of, if not their most important player, especially over the long term, he is their emotional barometer, right? He is the guy where if he has joy, everybody else is going to have joy. It's not like he hasn't had good games so far this season. It's not like he hasn't expressed this in spurts, but I got a different sense watching this team on Wednesday. And again, opponents got to be considered here. Orlando's not a good team. We're not offering a whole lot of resistance in the first half when the Wolves racked up 70-plus points. Didn't give much of resistance in the fourth quarter when the starters came back in. So, take that with a grain of salt. Understand who they're playing against, not just how they played. But the joy of Anthony Edwards in this game, the understanding of kind of when to shoot, when to pass, the energy you needed to bring into this game, even if it looked on paper like a mismatch, that was a good sign for the Wolves. And I think Edwards talked about it. Chris Hine, Star Tribune beat writer, who was on the show the other day, asked him after the game kind of, how do you build on this? How do you start to take this game now and translate it into, future success, game by game by game, where you bring this energy, you bring this understanding to every game? And I thought Ant gave an interesting answer, so I want to play that now.
For real, I'm still figuring it out, man. Year 3 for me. I should be a little better as far as trying to be more consistent game by game, but I'm still figuring out routines, habits, trying to find ways to continue to dominate every night. And I think the more film that I watch, the better that I'm getting with it. Crean always texts me every night, or before the game, telling me him and my trainer Key telling me what the defense gonna give me, telling me how to defend my matchup and stuff like that. So I'm trying to be better, man. I'm trying for sure. I'm gonna figure it out though, how to be consistent every night. For me, I think it's pretty much falling in love with success, because tonight I was staying in my jumper, I went fading. Then the next game, after I have a game like this, I always come out and be fading and be relaxed in my jumper, instead of I gotta find a way to just be locked in. Every game at 7 o'clock, it's time to lock in. No matter what's going on throughout the day, at 7 o'clock I gotta find a way to be the same way that I was tonight. So for sure I'm gonna try to come out with Philly and try to be the same way.
And I like the honesty there. I like the honesty that he's still figuring it out, and I think that is fair. He is just still in year 3. He's a very young year 3 player. I mean, this would just be his senior year in college if this was a different era where players stayed that long. And he's still I believe just 21 years old. I mean, that's not old. Did you have everything figured out when you were 21? I certainly did not have everything in my life figured out when I was 21. Yeah, he just turned 21 in August of this last year. He's a very young 21 right now. So just still figuring things out, still figuring out the consistency piece, still figuring out how to kind of bring that energy, and understanding that he's still figuring it out is a piece of that as well. Chris Finch was asked about that as well, Timberwolves head coach. Here was his answer to that question.
It's approach. It's mindset, it's approach. It's about how do you recover quickly, how do you get, restock the energy needed. And it's certainly it's not a skill set. It's also recognizing that every game's a little bit different, and then doing those things that are necessary in that game, but also, playing to your strengths and putting your, imposing yourself on the game too. I mean, I think tonight I thought he did a great job of recognizing the game was not necessarily a pick and roll game, because of all the switching that they were doing. And then, after we loosened them up a bit, we could drive them, and then we could drive their switches, in the second.
And that nuance that Finch referenced, that's important. That's something that players do have to understand, that not every game is the same, that not every game requires the same type of performance. Sometimes you're going to be able to shoot more threes because of the way the defense is playing. Sometimes it is going to be more of a pick and roll game. But understanding that this was not really a pick and roll game, that he had to do things differently in this game maybe than what he would do in another game, that's important. Then understanding going forward there's going to be different challenges, getting up again for the next game, playing Philadelphia tough, getting the Wolves back to 500, which they have an opportunity to do in their next game, bringing that intensity to every single game, understanding that, you can't just have one good game and then fall back, because that doesn't get you there. That's not how a professional operates. And these are professional basketball players, even if Ant is still learning. So that's a big part of his journey, to carry that energy, to carry that joy, but also to carry that focus into all of these games. There's going to be lapses. There's going to be things where you're not at your best every night, but you have to have that focus and preparation going in. Maybe that's starting to click. Maybe that light bulb is starting to go on for him. And if it does, that could be a big key to this Timberwolves season.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
It's College Football Talk on Daily Delivery. Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune joins me every week. Randy, I think we kind of left the Gophers in the ditch, so to speak, a few weeks ago when they lost their third straight Big Ten game, but they keep winning since then, and some of their competitors are falling back to the pack, most notably Illinois. All of a sudden, a four-way tie in the Big Ten West standings at 4-3, Minnesota, Purdue, Illinois, and Iowa. And still something to be sorted out in these last 2 weeks. The Gophers have basically zero tiebreakers, so they have to be the outright champs and almost certainly do have to win out in order to have any chance at claiming the Big Ten West. But just to be in that conversation, especially after where things had gone this season, having something to really legitimately play for at this point, just kind of shows you how fast things can change in this league.
Yeah, definitely. The Gophers took care of business in 3 games, Rutgers, Nebraska, and now Northwestern. So they did what they needed to do to get back in it, and some things broke their way, especially the Purdue win over Illinois that has those 4 teams bunched together now. The Gophers do need help, though. That's the tough part. If they win out, they win their last 2 against Iowa and Wisconsin, they will at least be West Division co-champs or tri-champs or whatever. But they're in tiebreaker trouble, so they need Illinois to lose one more game, which could happen. Illinois plays Michigan this week, then finishes with Northwestern, and they need Purdue to also lose one more time. The Boilermakers have Northwestern this week, and Indiana in the finale. Both of those are the last place teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so Purdue definitely has kind of what we would consider the inside track at this point, because they do have, the tiebreaker and probably have the easiest games of anybody. That said, Iowa also plenty to play for, because if Iowa wins this game and wins their finale, they've got the tiebreaker over Purdue. And if they got Illinois to lose to Michigan, that would be Iowa's Big Ten West in a season where they've been so maligned, when there have been so many jokes about Iowa's offense. Can you even imagine that?
Well, yeah, and they did it again against Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin 24-10, and it really wasn't the offense's fault that they won the game. They got a pick 6 from a D-back, and then that same D-back, Cooper DeJean, returned a punt 41 yards for a touchdown, setting up another 41 yards for setting up to set up another touchdown, and they had a blocked field goal also. They won that game despite finishing only 146 yards of offense.
And that's kind of, that's been the story of their season. Like, their defense has been awfully good. And I would say if you were to pick one side of the ball for the Gophers that's been better and more consistent, it's obviously been the defense this year. That's not been perfect all the way through. Gave a bunch of points to Penn State, and they had, their share of struggles containing Illinois at a certain point. But this figures on Saturday to be a fairly low-scoring game where you're going to want to minimize mistakes. It's going to be cold, it seems like, in this environment. How do you see this game unfolding with what we know about these two teams?
Well, I think it's going to be a defensive battle, and both teams, the passing game for both teams haven't been good this year. In conference games, the Gophers are last in the Big Ten, at 157 yards a game, and Iowa's just ahead of them at 164. So, you'll see the ball in the air sometimes, but I think we're going to mainly see a rushing game, and tight defense and special teams should play a pretty big battle. And then Iowa has good special teams there, so that'll be a tough matchup for the Gophers too. I expect something low scoring. I see the over under originally came out at 32.5 in this thing, which means 16.5 to 16 is the final score.
I think the Gophers would take it if they could.
Yeah, they'll take whatever they can to beat Iowa. The program has lost 7 in a row to the Hawkeyes. Last time it was in 2014. Max Williams huge game against where the Gophers put up 50. They're 0-5 with PJ Fleck as coach against Iowa. Last year was one that they really needed to have and didn't get a couple big plays. Suck them. They ran up and down the field, but just didn't convert when they needed to. And again, this is one where it's very important to score first. Iowa scored first in all those games, and they get that lead, and that defense can choke the life out of a team.
What did we learn about Ethan Kaliakmanis last week? It didn't feel like they needed to lean on him a whole lot. It was a lot of Mo Ibrahim. It was a lot of just, they got a lead on Northwestern and kind of did what both of these teams will want to do this week, which is get a lead and then, play from ahead and control the clock, things like that. They'll probably need more from him in this game. Did we see enough in this game and in his other efforts this year to think that he can deliver that against what will be a marquee defense?
It's going to be interesting to find out. I mean, they wanted more out of him last week. And he had an off game. He was misfiring on throws, a little bit behind some guys, and there were a couple plays that had he hit those passes, probably at least one of them a touchdown, another one a big gainer. Maybe the stat line looks a little bit better. After he only threw 4 passes in the second half as the Gophers took over with their ground game. I think there's a point where PJ Fleck just said, "Okay, we're going to just take care of business here and get the win, and let's not mess anything up here."
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense, especially at this point in the season. And again, like with something to play for. I mean, they do have at least an outside chance now of getting into that, Big Ten title, Big Ten championship game. And like you said, at the very least, if they do win out, they are, Big Ten co-champs, Big Ten tri-champs. How long has it been since that happened?
Oh, what year was that? I'd have to look that up to find out when they were tri-champs. But they in 19 they shared the West title with Wisconsin. Wisconsin goes to the title game on the head-to-head win. And if they win these last two, they would at least have a share of that title. But everybody wants more than that share. You want to get the Indy.
Yes.
The one thing that's little stat in their favor that Purdue and Northwestern. I'm kind of surprised when I saw this, but Northwestern has won the last 5 times it's played at West Lafayette. So maybe there's a little hope there for the Gophers for that upset to come through.
Yeah, Purdue definitely a big favorite, almost 3 touchdowns in that game. But You're right. I mean, Northwestern, when those two teams play, strange things happen, and Purdue is certainly the type of team that's showing that it's capable of beating teams. They beat Illinois, they beat Minnesota. They're also capable of losing to just about anybody. So you don't want to put anything in the bank. You don't want to put any game in the Big Ten West in anybody's win column or loss column before it has actually happened, because there's been enough upsets, enough surprises this year to know that nothing is certain. A couple more thoughts for you, Randy, before we go. One of them being, this isn't just a Gophers Iowa game and a chance to win a trophy. This is the last home game of the season, last home game for a lot of Gophers seniors. I think a couple of them were part of the media availability on Tuesday. A strange career path, I'm sure, for a lot of these guys, just because COVID was right in the middle of it. What was some of the takeaways from that?
Just a lot of them just so appreciative of what they've been able to accomplish here. They point back to that 19 season. That was, a magical year and a very good one. They haven't quite returned to that level. But yeah, there's a lot of appreciation of just the camaraderie of teammates and everything. John Michael Schmidt's the center, the 6th-year senior. He's part of that Encore 4. That 3 of them will be ending their careers, their home careers on Saturday. And another one, Chris Hoppen-Bell, looks like he'll be coming back next year if they get the NCAA waiver for that 7th year after his early season injury. So yeah, it's a lot of appreciation that they were talking about, and they have some business to finish too. This is an important game to them, and I'm sure it sticks in their craw that they haven't beaten Iowa yet.
Yeah, as long as these guys have been here, they still haven't beaten them, even though some of them have been here now for 6-7 years. Even if you go back that far, you haven't beaten Iowa. And then opportunity next week too. That's not a home game, obviously, but at Wisconsin. If they are able to win this game against Iowa, they are small favorites in this game, at least according to the betting odds. If they were able to win this game, we've been in this position before a lot of times where they go into this Wisconsin game. A lot of times it's Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving that they're playing one of these rivalry games, and then they've come up short. It could be another opportunity for them to have a breakthrough type of win. Wisconsin's not the program it's been, but they're 5-5. They will not just roll over in a game like that. They will want to win that game if it comes to that.
Yeah, and I look at it this way too. Iowa at 6-4, Wisconsin at 5-5. We're not talking the great Iowa and the great Nebraska, Wisconsin teams we've seen.
Definitely not the great Nebraska teams we've seen.
Yeah, that kind of snuck in there, but yeah, it's still tough to beat them both in the same year. And how tough that is is interesting. The last time they pulled that exacta was in 1990 when they beat Wisconsin in Madison, and Barry Alvarez's first year as head coach. Then they finished the season in the Dome against Iowa, an Iowa team that day when another Big Ten result came in, already had clinched the Rose Bowl. The Gophers ended up beating them. The interesting thing there, I was the beat writer for the Minnesota Daily at that time. Maybe it'll come full circle here.
Maybe it'll come full circle. Wow, 1990. I'm trying to think who the coach was. Was that Goody still?
Goody, John Gutekunst.
Wow, it's been 32 years since they beat both those teams in the same season. I mean, I know they had the long drought against Wisconsin, so it makes sense. But you would have thought maybe one of those Mason teams, I don't know, one of those better teams would have done it, but they just haven't done it, and they get a shot at it every year, Randy. So that's not a great stat. I'm sure that's one that they would love to end their careers ending instead of.
I got one more quick anecdote from that game.
Yeah, do it.
It's interesting because Gophers got off to a decent lead in that game. Early in the third quarter, they're backed in the like up against their end zone, basically on the 1 or 2 yard line. Well, this is back in the days when if a road crowd on your team on the road, the crowd gets wild, you could turn to the ref to basically get a little bit of relief. They give you some time to maybe they calm down. Well, at the Dome, the Iowa fans were getting so loud that Markel Fleetwood, the Gophers quarterback, had to call for help from the ref for time. And so it was kind of going back and forth because then you get threatened to have a delay a game. Well, then the Gophers fans started roaring to possibly give Iowa a delay a game. So it was good stuff back then. Good stuff back then.
And there was nowhere for the noise to go in the Dome. Maybe we'll see what the crowd is like Saturday. I imagine people are going to be all covered in blankets, however many of them there are. But it's a rivalry game. It's got some meaning. It should, I would imagine, should be a good, decent crowd. We'll see how much they are of help to the Gophers in that game. And Randy, you'll have all of the coverage as always. Follow Randy, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, and we'll do this again next week, Randy.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Postscript to my conversation with Randy Johnson. He wrote in Thursday's paper, tight end Brevin Spann-Ford. Sounds like he is foregoing Senior Day festivities on Saturday. Again, this is the final home game of the year, so any seniors can go through the Senior Day festivities, kind of get their honors for all their time in the program. Brevin Spann-Ford, fifth-year tight end, not going through it. Asked if he's thinking about coming back next year. Spann-Ford said, "We'll see. That's all I've really got to say." That would be a big deal for the Gophers. Spann-Ford, 6'7", 270 pounds, has 31 catches. That's a team high this year, 374 yards. He's got that extra year of eligibility because of the COVID season, and he might take advantage of that. Now, if he comes back, if Chris Ottman-Bell uses his extra year from injury this year, that would give presumed starter Ethan Kaliakmanis 2 experienced targets coming back in 2023 from a position group that could really use could really use a couple of experienced guys. So if that's the case, that could be a big deal for the Gophers, not just this year but in future years. Let's move on to the Wild playing Pittsburgh coming up here. That's a tough one for them in some respects, but it gets tougher when you think about all the guys they have missing from the lineup right now. Talked the other day about the lack of scoring. 8 goals in their last 6 games. Ryan Hartman's still out. Jordan Greenway's still out. Sounds like they're reshuffling the lines again Sounds like they're reshuffling the power play again, trying to find some combination that will get things going. I mean, they keep talking optimistically about the floodgates opening up, that they can start getting one or two to go in. They can get a whole lot going in, but they got to get one or two to go in before that's going to happen. And it becomes even more critical now because Marc-Andre Fleury, goalie for them, who has been very good lately, injured, upper body injury. He finished that game the other night against Nashville, the 2-1 loss, but was injured at some point in that game and now is out for what sounds like at least a week. The soonest he can come back is next Wednesday when he is on injured reserve. So that's going to be a tough one for the Wild. Going to be leaning on backup Philip Gustafsson to carry things over. Now, this was a little bit easier at times, in recent years when the Wild had Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen back there. There was a couple times where Talbot was out for extended stretches and Kähkönen played very well. Underrated stretches of some of those last two seasons where they were able to sustain momentum. Now, the goaltending duo, completely different this year. Could have been Talbot and Fleury, but Talbot traded in the offseason. Fleury re-signed. Gustafsson part of that trade. So now the onus is on him to be the goalie. Not saying he can't do it, but this will be a test for them, a test for him to see if he can be that number one guy even for a short period of time. His overall numbers this year are okay, 1-3-1 with a 2.81 goals against average and 914 save percentage. Just got his first win the other day when the Wild scored 4 goals and beat Anaheim. But before that, he hadn't had a win in his first 4 games with the Wild. So looking to see if he can be that guy. He's a fairly young goalie, just 24. He's the definite backup this year. Fleury's been taking the vast majority of the games, but this is his opportunity now to show what he can do, to show if he can be that guy. And he's going to have to play a decent number of games. I mean, he hadn't played a whole lot. Hadn't played a whole lot this year, but the Wild, between now and next Wednesday, they've got a bunch of games. They got Pittsburgh tonight. They've got Carolina on Saturday. They got Winnipeg after that. So there are at least a couple games where he's going to have to be that guy, and we'll see if Fleury can get back in time to kind of to get back into that mix and see where he can get to. But they're going to be riding Gustafsson for at least a couple games here, and we'll see where that leaves them. We'll see if they can score some goals instead of just keeping them out of the net as well. Let's finish with the cooler. K-fans, Paul Allen is not for everybody, as he calls Vikings games, but he is for a lot of people. People enjoy the enthusiasm with which he uses to call games. That has caught the attention of a national audience. LeBron James, of all people, tweeting about how much he loves Paul Allen after being prompted by a Pat McAfee tweet. Pat McAfee calling Paul Allen incredible human. I've missed so much electricity. LeBron James calling Paul Allen a national treasure. Let's play Paul Allen's call of that Buffalo fumble in the end zone the other day. He and Pete Burcich going absolutely bonkers. We'll finish up that way here in a minute.
First down from the goal stripe for the Bills. Josh Allen puts Gabe Davis in motion, and Davis was behind Allen, and he tried to push him. He didn't get out of there! He didn't get out! He did not get out! That's a safety! Give it to us! Give us a safety!
Look at what's taking so long.
Oh, the ball came out!
Down.
Yes, the Vikings! The Vikings are going to win!
Are you kidding me?
Yes, drop that ball, Josh Allen!
That ball came loose!
And on that note, Vikings will be the subject of a lot of chat on Friday's show. Ben Gessling expected to join me, Vikings beat writer here at the Star Tribune. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Be back at it again tomorrow.